All right, now we welcome on Olli Hoare of the On Athletics Club and one of the co-hosts of the Coffee Club podcast. Before we even talk running, Ollie, I want to talk, I guess, about podcast life. How are you enjoying the show? It's a couple episodes deep. The reception, I think, has been, as you would put it, good for the sport.
Yeah, hashtag good for the sport. I mean, I think for us, like as living with professional runners, we have so much time on our hands during that kind of recovery period between runs, and we thought it'd be cool to have like just a candid idea of enjoying to sit down, have a cup of coffee, and have a chat, and be much more casual about things. And I think the way that we've done it is we're just having fun with it. I think you guys can come from the same background as it's not a chore week after week. We kind of get excited about it and we enjoy every time. We can talk about different topics and different people's perspectives, and it's been fun. We've really enjoyed it, and the reception's been fantastic. We got a few shout outs at Boston University going around the track. People weren't yelling out "Go OAC," they were yelling out "Go Coffee Club." So that's kind of a fun thing. But yeah, so far we're loving it, and it's just been really enjoyable to do.
Now, who's the conversation has definitely been quality. Now, is the coffee also meet that level? Like, is there a coffee snob of the whole bunch that kind of goes behind the whole coffee portion of the whole thing?
Definitely. I mean, you're talking to two Australians and a New Zealander running a podcast. The coffee's got to be good. It's got to be espresso. And we've actually been really, really lucky. A lot of people who have been listening have been sending out their own beans and testing out different types of products with that. And it's been a lot of fun to make it. And we shout them out in the pod. And we usually take turns on making the coffee. And a few guests that we've had who are Americans who aren't even used to that kind of espresso cafe coffee have really enjoyed it. So that's been fun too to kind of convert some Americans onto off the drip coffee and onto the espresso coffee. So
What's the
It's
dream like coffee sponsorship? Like, you don't want to settle for like Starbucks may throw you the money, but you don't want to, I guess, settle for Starbucks coffee.
yeah, I mean definitely not. I mean Starbucks didn't even exist in Australia until probably like a year ago, and it's much more of a fashion statement I think than an actual coffee performance situation. But for us, I mean our goal is to roast our own coffee. We wanna make like I mean if you haven't seen our logo, it's a little coffee bag with my dog Angus on it. We want to kind of work with a roaster and make our own coffee and sell that out and make it kind of a runner's thing. Because obviously coffee culture is kind of big in our sport. So for us, that'd be an ideal thing if we can work with a roaster with that. But I mean, I really like Blue Bottle Coffee. If they were interested in us, shout out to them. But yeah, any kind of big sponsor would be fine. At this point in time, they're going to send us free beans and we can kind of enjoy the ride. It'd be
um
fun.
where do it's also kind of funny to hear like Americans haven't experienced that kind of coffee, like kind of where in your age demographic of professional runners, like I feel like a lot of people haven't been over to Europe, and that whole European cycle or Australian cycle hasn't really happened with like your age group yet. So that's super. It's like the Leuven camp hasn't happened. Like when I first started was I would when I first signed in like 14, I would say that was like part of the heyday of like the Leuven camps, and like everybody would go over there, and then you have to experience that whole culture. Coffee culture was massive over there. That's super interesting to hear. Like Americans haven't like sort of experienced that, but like, where do you guys have plans on where you sort of want to take your podcast? Like, do you have plans 6 months to a year from now, if you want to change it at all
Um,
or grow it?
Yeah, we do. I mean, we've been talking like I mean, we had a long one this morning. We're chatting about certain things, like even like buying like a roasting machine and doing it ourselves, or like buying like a 5 year goal of like having our own kind of coffee spot, like a cafe for runners, kind of idea. I mean, we've already got little stickers.
Stickers, wow, nice.
Yeah, so we've started that, and I mean, we'll move into kind of that merch. We'll sell our souls and do the merch thing. But I think for us, we're just really enjoying the week by week response of people kind of enjoying a conversation, particularly with the agreeing and disagreeing. I think it's been nice to have people kind of agree with some things or agree with one person and disagree and have an active role in a discussion in certain aspects of the sport, which we've really enjoyed. But for us, yeah, if we can like have that outlook and a positive outlook on the sport, but also kind of, I mean, like with you guys as well, bring awareness to different aspects of it. That's kind of our goal moving forward. And then obviously, if we can kind of create, a coffee business around it, would be awesome. roasting beans, maybe potentially opening up a shop. And particularly in obviously the culture with Boulder is a lot of people drink coffee here. A lot of people come here to run. And I think that would be a cool thing where, you go and visit Boston, you see all the great sites and areas and places to enjoy with running, and Eugene as well. Whereas you come to Boston, you think, oh, I'm going to go to the coffee club shop and see the merch, have a coffee. You can bring your dogs, so there'll be like a little dog section for that. So that's kind of our goal with it. But obviously, we take it week by week with the coffee club. I think last week we mentioned if we didn't run well at Boston, we might shut it down. So luckily we ran well, so we can keep it going.
The thing that I like in particular about the podcast, and at first I'm just kind of like texting one of the people in your agency, I was like, do you get a little worried when you see like the titles for each episode? And they were like, no, because like I think we're at that point now where, for the longest time there's been this big push for the athletes to be more marketable and more open and share. And I think what you guys are doing with the podcast in particular is pretty freely sharing your thoughts on things, and people seem to like more sort of that transparency and unfiltered thoughts than sort of like the cookie cutter response or just dead silence. So I'm enjoying listening to the episodes.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a bit warming to hear that from you guys in particular, because like when we were in Boston, Jonathan Galt, who's also a journalist, kind of approached me and really enjoyed it and loved the idea of it. So that means that we're doing something right. We obviously kind of, when we look back and listen to certain things, we're like, okay, this will be interesting. But we kind of we want to kind of open up that discussion. We don't want people to always agree with everything we say. We kind of want people to challenge us a bit, and that's how you can comment and you can interact with us, and then we can kind of go back on it if we need to. So for us, it's kind of opening up that discussion, because I feel like a lot of stuff might slide under the rug a little bit, and for us, we'd like to talk about it and discuss it, because then people can kind of be more receptive to it. And I don't know, it makes people more aware. Maybe it creates hype. It creates people to be more excited about the sport, and maybe gets people behind certain people.
So it's good to hear that you guys haven't gotten like the call from like on sports marketing, be like, hey, you got to cut this out next time, or just like pull the plug on this.
I mean, we have gotten close with certain things, but much more of like us being a bit more like, I think with certain things we might have been a bit not been in depth with certain things and maybe brushed over it. So for us, that's just learning to be better with it. And I think you guys know, like after you do it more and more, you kind of learn how to be much more professional in a sense. For us, I mean, we fuck around a lot, but I think it's just a way in which we can engage much better with the audience, and engage much better with the topic as well. So for us, it's a great learning experience, and we're really enjoying it. And I mean, the three of us are like, we're pretty into podcasts. We watch a lot of running podcasts, and like we kind of learn from them and then adapt our own kind of style. And I think it's nice to kind of take notes from it and progress with it.
So let's touch on your running from this past weekend. Fresh off running 13:09.96, destroy the previous Australian indoor record by 26 seconds, 12 seconds off your personal best of 13:22 from back in March. Now the sub 13:10 Australian club includes Craig Mottram, Stewie McSwain, Carl Spurringham, and you. So I guess like for some people, they thought, it's December, why are you guys running this fast? Worlds isn't until, mid-March basically. But I kind of want to go into sort of picking up from the Olympics, which we'll touch on later on. But what was the purpose of this race? And I guess how has Dathan devised a plan for you guys that it's good to run fast now, but I'm guessing the goal is going to be Eugene next year?
Yeah, 100%. And that's the question that we got asked a lot. Why are you guys going to BU and potentially getting dropped by college kids? Because really, these college kids are the best there's ever been. And, they're all sharp. They're all coming off national cross. And as you can see with the results, like they just ran a ridiculous time. So, I mean, for us, really, I think after Zurich and then New York, for me, I had a break. And then 8 weeks up to Boston was when we started training. And for us, really, it was just about getting that strength work in. And I think I really underestimated how lucky I've been to be able to like consistently train and take those breaks and not be injured and not have any kind of issues with training, because the strength really like kind of relayed over for me, particularly with experience too. And I mean, Joe Klecker is a machine, so he's been, pushing out miles and really kind of bringing the team up with that kind of scheduling. And the exciting thing for us too was George. I mean, George is a guy that's notoriously been injured and not been able to kind of string together a lot of weeks of training. And as you guys probably would have known, like the last few miles that he raced, he was just coming home like a steam train. He looked fantastic at the end of the season. So we really wanted to kind of, keep him going, keep him relaxed and focused. And there was so much time between the break that we were taking after the end of the season up to our first race, which is going to be Millrose Games on January 29th for the three of us. And so we thought Boston would be a great way to kind of see where we were with the training. Joe has US Cross coming up, so he's excited about that. And obviously fit and ready to go. So he wanted to pace us through, and we really wanted to get, a great race out. And like, for me, I've been competing really well, and I'm been kind of really excited about the way I've been progressing with my racing and my training. But for George as well in particular, I'd like to be able to run 13:12, second fastest ever in New Zealand, and very, very close to that New Zealand outdoor record even. And to run the Olympic standard for him, like it's a great win for him. It's a great indication for his training and confidence booster, but it also shows that we're in the right place right now. We don't need to stress and kind of enjoy the process leading up to when we kind of sharpen up for a lot of those faster races coming into indoors and obviously world indoor champs. So yeah, Dathan really had that plan of just kind of giving someone an indication of where you are. We didn't think we were going to run that quick. We thought under 13:20 was going to be a great day for us. But the pacing was great. We felt great. We kind of progressed with it. And obviously having those collegiates really push the pace and kind of rally really gave us a great environment to kind of run quick.
How has your guys' adjustment been from last year with Dathan, like his voice to you guys, or you guys as a group? You guys as a team had a phenomenal year last year. It was your first sort of real year. And I think a lot of people can get sort of carried away with, imagine everything that we could do next year if we just basically double everything or double the pressure. Have you guys sort of kept that? How have you guys sort of kept that in check? And where do you sort of want to take this whole next year as a group and individually?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the first year we had was, I'm not going to say luck, but we just had everything go right. Like we had an amazing year. We had 2 US Olympians. We had 5 Olympians total, just tagging on Morgan. But I mean, like to come out of the gates like we did, you expect, or some people would expect, like, oh, it's just a flash in the pan, and then they'll sizzle down, and there might be some implications and injuries coming into the next year. So that's something that Dathan really focused on. After the season was done, we all met together, and he's very much in the idea of like, people now have an expectation on our hands, and they want to see us not succeed. They want us to see us fail, because usually when there's a rise, there's a fall. That's just the way the sport goes. But for Dathan, he really wants us to keep enjoying what we're doing, really embrace that team aspect that I think is something that's unique about our group. We have a very great team culture, and we're very invested in each other's performances. I think particularly for the foreigner guys, we went down to the US trials, and the emotions from that were ridiculous, seeing Alicia and Joe achieve their dreams of making the Olympic Games. Like we felt like we contributed to that, and Joe definitely took a piece of that as well, pacing George and I to world standards and national records. So we really have that great jive going, and I think building together, particularly being internationals, like not really competing for the same team, that kind of growth has really, really helped us kind of develop as like really great teammates in professional track running, which I think is not easy to do. And I think Dathan's cultivated an environment like that that's been fantastic. It's really tough to be able to like replicate what we did last year, but for us, it's all about enjoying it, enjoying the process. And there will be times where we don't have great races or things don't go to plan, but we'll learn from those experiences and hopefully develop as athletes and move and hit the goals and hit the marks that we want to do. Individually for me, I think for me, I'd love to make as many teams as I can this year. I mean, we have World Indoors, we have Commonwealth Games 10 days after World Champs in Eugene. And as a Commonwealth Games athlete, like I grew up watching that. It was a big deal for me, so I really want to make that team. But World Champs in Eugene, like Eugene's been very special to me. I won my NCAA championship there. I've run pretty quick there. I've run pre there. So I'd love to be able to represent my country there and medal. And I know George is the same mindset, Morgan's the same mindset, and so is Joe. And the girls are definitely thinking the same thing. So for us, it's just all about getting as many people on those teams as possible, reaching our potential from that training, and also developing as a group. I think we really want to present ourselves as a group that isn't just, like a one-hit wonder. We want to be consistent. We want to be like the Beatles. We want to be consistent. We want to be keeping hits coming out, and we want to really enjoy cultivating an environment about excitement with our group. On being a very new brand, a very small brand in the running community, we have a kind of responsibility for them to kind of show people, what this brand's about and what they kind of entail. And yeah, for us, it's really about going out there, doing the best we can, representing our brand and each other as best as we can, and being excited about it. So that's really our goal for this year. And I think with a lot of people, like particularly with the women's side and the men's side, both wanting to make those teams, I think we'll see a lot of great performances coming out. And it's just obviously coming off a great year, great environment, great culture, and we're hoping to continue that as much as possible.
The one thing you told, I think, like in the interview I think you did with Let's Run right after the race in Boston, was that like you're a believer now in like Dathan's strength training. And so
Yeah.
what does that look like behind the scenes, like I guess in training? And then has that been like a step up or level up now going into, I guess, this year than it was last year?
Yeah, I mean, I came from. I remember when they were looking at someone to coach the team, and I was in Wisconsin. I lived with two Michigan guys, and I asked them who Dathan Ritzenhein was. I almost got chucked out of the house because of his reputation through his career, and I just didn't really know much about him always coaching. And then when we went to our first year, the strength work was it was an interesting up. It was a kind of a growth for me. I mean, I did a lot of strength work at Wisconsin, but it was just a different level. It was intense. It was up at altitude, and my mileage had gone up a lot. So I was durable enough to get through it. But I think for me, the believer in Ritz's training was definitely just having that stack of year and then being able to translate that to the next stack. Because I thought I could burn out, or I could just not be able to kind of replicate or increase what I've been doing. And I mean, don't get me wrong, like Joe Klecker and George were probably dropping me a lot of strength workouts because those guys are ridiculously good at those altitude workouts, those 9-mile fartleks or mile repeats, or those type of tough workouts that we do kind of at the start of the season. But for me, I was much more receptive to it. I was able to tolerate it physically as well as mentally. And that kind of made me believe that like I struggled to have the idea of like me being able to improve off last year because of the jump I made. But even for the training and through Dathan kind of telling me like this is like where you would go. This is like how it would go through is you every week you will develop and you'll hopefully be able to tap in more miles. And it's not just about running quicker, but it's about how you feel during the workout. Can you feel more comfortable? Are you more receptive? And that kind of for me was definitely big off the 8 weeks after running a lot of 1500s and a lot of miles to make my Olympic team. So that was a very promising thing for me. And I think all the boys have different stories about that, particularly like George, being able to consistently get weeks in of mileage and be able to stay healthy and train at his level. And that's an exciting, progression, particularly for Joe too, being able to keep those workouts and those high mileages week after week without dealing with any injuries or fatigue. So yeah, for us, it's all about developing as athletes. And Ritz, I mean, yeah, he's only known me, Joe. Well, he's only known most of the team, but unlike Leo and Emily, for a year. So he's learning every day, every week. So that's the exciting thing about a young coach like him too. He's very receptive to that communication between athlete and coach, and he learns every week. And he'll say, "Oh, I messed this up," or he'll say, "Oh, this worked well," and kind of grow from that. And that's an exciting thing too, that he's very responsive to it. So
Yeah, Dathan was. I love Dathan. I think it was his first step into coaching. When he was banged up at the end of his career. when he was still in Portland. He came down and was a volunteer assistant at Oregon during my last year for about like 6 months. And he would come down on workout days and would come down for our races, and he was awesome to have around. It was a complete um, opposite side from like how Andy Powell functions, who's like, and I don't know if that's what they did on purpose, but Andy is like a very like cool, collected. Not that Dathan isn't cool or collected, but a lot more emotion behind like race days with Dathan. Like
Yeah, yeah,
extreme emotion of like getting you
yeah.
pumped up for races. Andy kind of like lets you, um, I don't know, lets you set up how you want to set up for a race. Like he'll do a little bit of motivating or whatever, but you know, it's a little bit more mutual, I would say. Dathan would come in there like pre-race as you were about to like step onto the track, and he'd be like, "You're gonna go kill these guys," in worse words, and you'd step on the racetrack, be like, "Oh, I'm gonna murder these guys." And it was
Yeah.
like a completely different aspect of anything I was used to with Vin or Andy. And I don't know if he's still like that or anything like that, but
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's the one thing that was, I mean, because Mick Byrne, head coach at Wisconsin, was very much like Andy, very much reserved. I mean, when Morgan won his 4 NCAA titles, Mick was like in the stands, not even like jumping up and down. He's just standing there. Obviously, the emotion was behind him, like he was definitely feeling it, but he wouldn't show it. Like, and that's just the way Mick operated. Whereas with Dathan, I remember with Gateshead, my debut Diamond League was a very important race because that's like pretty much the Australian trials. We had 4 Australians in that race. And we kind of got flew over. We were like in and out for that race as well. We didn't sleep for like 36 hours. And Dathan sacrificed a lot to like get there as well. And because they only like had room for one, like they only just slot me in for that race. And I remember before that race, he said like he's just revving you up. He's like, you're gonna kill these guys. Like you're gonna kill it. Have that believe in your training, trust the process, and I remember finishing that race, and like that race was an indication of me potentially making the Olympic Games. And he was really emotional about it. He just like grabbed me and gave me a big hug and said, "I'm so proud of you." And that was just a different reception. I think if you watch after the Boston meet, when Geordie crossed the line, Geordie hasn't had that breakout race until he ran 13:12, and Dathan literally crossed through the line and just grabbed him. And there's great photos of him just hugging George and just being excited about it and being amped. And Dathan's just that type of coach. And he wears his heart on his sleeve, and he's very passionate. And there's like, I mean, there's just so many examples the past year. Like it was an emotional roller coaster with Leah. And like I think if you watch the On documentary, you guys will see the like he brought her back from the dead, really, from being in a place where she didn't think she could compete in the sport anymore to being up there to potentially be that top three, and then hitting that hurdle and dealing with that process afterwards. Like Dathan puts a lot of emotion and a lot of heart into it, and it's not like other coaches don't, but I think the way he has been able to reaffirm that and make you feel, you feel like you've achieved something, or feel like, this sport is important to people. It's a lifestyle and it's a luxury, and what we get to do is a privilege. And what he's been able to kind of translate, particularly to young athletes as well, like the men's team, just all out of college when he was coaching them. So to have a guy who's been at the top, who's been at multiple Olympic Games and has dealt with the highs and the lows of running, to be able to give you that kind of support has been fantastic for us. And I know at Boston, it was very exciting to see him just grab Geordie and give him a massive hug and hug Joe and get Joe back on the treadmill to do a massive workout afterwards. And that was great, And yeah, I think that's not going to change. Like he'll be 80 years old, hobbling around the track, and doing the same thing. I think that's just the way he is, and that's the way he approaches his coaching.
You kind of touch on a little bit of like that unfamiliarity he had with his name at first, but then I mean, we're jumping around a little bit. I want to go back to the first conversation that you may have had with, was it Klecker then, who kind of started to lay the foundation for the team? Because I guess when Joe made the team last summer, I remember interviewing him like moments after it happened, and he said that I guess that Joe was one of the cornerstones of this team that has been built, and so it was truly special to see. I would say that you're probably the next cornerstone that sort of came in addition to the women that he was bringing from Michigan. So how did I guess what was the recruiting pitch like for you? Was it Joe talking to you? Was it Dathan approaching you? What was that first conversation like?
Yeah, it was interesting because I didn't know On at all, and they were talking to me before COVID hit. Andrew Whiting, who works for On, I had a great conversation with him because he actually gave me a lot of insight to professional athlete life, and particularly his life with Nike, which sounded horrible. Just to be fair, like just the reductions and the pressure and like that whole kind of what he dealt with there was mentally tough. And I think he was pitching for On, saying like, look, we don't offer those kind of negative, you know, motivations. We offer like a positive aspect. We want to like jump into this track scene and we want to do it well and do it right by the athlete because that's how we both succeed. And after that, I didn't really have a conversation with Joe, but I knew Joe had signed with On, and he was interested. We had like a couple of messages off Instagram. I have actually never really spoken to Joe through my collegiate career because I never really raced him. You know, I know Morgan obviously did, so I got a bit of an insight from Morgs. But I think when I had my first conversation with Dathan, I looked him up. I did my research. I was so glad I didn't go to high school in America because he sounded like he was terrifying. But I had simple questions for him. My first question was, hey, like I want to be a low 330s 1500 meter guy. I want to make the Olympic final. I want to be a medalist in the future. Like you obviously got great experience, but like where's your experience in coaching middle distance guys? Like how am I going to come into this team thinking, okay, you've signed Joe. You know, great signing. Obviously, he's going to be the American guy. He's going to be the guy that On will release. Like, what about myself? Because I feel like obviously you and Joe have a lot of common with that, and me not so much. And he talked about his time with Matt Senchowitz and his time like learning and developing with those type of athletes, working at Oregon, and he just answered it so well that I was like, oh shit, okay, that kind of put me back a little bit. But I mean, the one thing I liked about Dathan too was his commitment because with a brand like On, we didn't know what was going to happen. We knew, like I knew Adidas, I knew Nike, I knew those other brands. I knew they had groups, I knew their foundations in running. On didn't have any foundations like that. So I was taking a big risk, even as a foreigner who either, you know, signs here or goes home and figures out what he's going to do at home in Australia. So I was taking a big risk. Joe took a massive risk. But Dathan literally moved his whole family out from Michigan to Colorado to start this group. And that commitment from myself told me that this guy isn't here to muck around. He's not here for a contract. He's here to coach athletes. He's here to develop professional athletes. He doesn't care about, you know, those other little luxuries that people might get with a budget or with a salary. Like his main motivation is to come out here and to put his whole heart and soul into coaching athletes and developing them. And that's my big indication of like, okay, I have much more confidence in that. And once we all moved out, I think, yeah, the cornerstones, those first 8, that cornerstone was really the make or break for the group. Is this group going to survive? Is the culture going to go well? Like, you know, like I raced against Carlos and Geordie most of my collegiate career, but we've never like spent time together. We've never trained together. We don't know how we're going to interact day by day. And luckily, you know, just everything clicked. We got on super well. And it just formed, and we knew something was special. Even before, I think my first big race was in New York last year, but even before those races were happening, the training we're doing, the environment we were creating on the men's and women's side, it was something special. So we knew it was going to be good. We knew it was going to go out well. It just depended on how that was going to translate into racing, and it just took off, and we just went with it. And I think Dathan particularly, like coming from coaching at Gazelle and like kind of not being in an environment now where he's coaching guys at Diamond Leagues, Olympics, like he definitely kind of rose to that occasion as a young coach coming off professional running, because obviously not all professional runners are going to be good coaches, but he's very unusual in the sense of like he's very, very selfless as a coach, and he'll do what he can and what he must to get everybody to a point where they're enjoying the sport and enjoying the lifestyle, which is funny because I think he told me as a runner, he was a complete arsehole. Like he was individualized, like just going for it, hitting the miles and training the way he wants to train. Whereas a coach, he's very much aware and receptive of everybody's strengths and weaknesses and trying to develop them together. So, yeah, that's, I think for me, that indication of his commitment made me thinking that, you know, if he's doing that, then what have I got to lose?
Mhm. Obviously I mean, I would say his strength background is obviously doing you some favors right now too. Do you take pride in sort of you, Stewie, Jakob? There's a couple others. You guys have quickly changed how the 15 is run, how the men's 15 internationally is run, and especially in the U.S. At the domestic meets here are run. Um, to the point where I think it was Whiteman was saying that he needs to change his training because of how different it's run all of a sudden. You will front run and run hard every single time and sort of create your own luck. I think Stewie is doing the same exact thing. Your guys' DL points like through the roof, the wins, the consistent 334 and under races that you've had. Um, do you see yourself kind of doing the same thing? How do you see like the 15 trending this year and next?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I coming off college, I watched a lot of races, and the one guy that I loved watching race was Matt Centro, because he was technically perfect. Like regardless of the where the race was, because it was much more of a tactical championship race, he was perfect. The way he raced, the way he positioned himself, the way he made his moves was like almost spot on. It was great to watch, and I think Matt was the catalyst to change the way people run the 1500 because of his gold medal in Rio. I think that's what started it, because people like me started to see that people can win races at that pace. You just got to close. And I thought, well, I can counter that. Chewy thought, I can counter that. Jakob, Chariot, they can counter that. They'll go out in 151 and they can hang on because they've got that speed endurance, they've got that strength. And then people started to become more receptive to that kind of running. Josh Kerr as well. He'll go out and solo a 331 because he knows he can do that. So I think Matt winning a race like that, who was like obviously a slow 1500-meter Olympic final, but the way he won it, I think made people realize that they could win a race the other way. They could come off a training in a different way, and I think that's why even now the 5K is so important in 1500-meter running. You look at the 5K PBs, and that's one of the reasons why BU was a good indication for us, is because a lot of the 5K PRs for those athletes is very, very close to 13 minutes. And Matt Centro is a 30-minute 5K. Stewie has 13:05. Jakob's got 12:40 something. I don't know, something ridiculous. Like, those kind of people have those kind of those times. And I mean, Kerr has the same. Kerr's Olympic bronze medalist, 13:22 and a 1:45, 1:46, 800. So he can run those other events. And then I think being good at those other events and being competitive really can help you translate to a 1500, because the way the Olympics went, which I kind of thought it would, was that every race was quick, but it still kicked. People still kicked afterwards. I mean, the Olympic record was broken in the semi-final. It was just, it's going off a trend where I think now people are going to be able to maintain that speed, but be able to either hold it or just increase it. I think going into these competitive races like Cole Hocker, for example, he can now prove to himself that he can run at those races. He can run at that pace, because people were thinking, oh, he can run at 25 like it's no one's business. But he really proved that he can kick off those races and he can be competitive in those races. So I think the trend is going to stay that way, because I think a lot of people are now translating their training to be able to run good 5Ks, good 800s, to run a good 1500. Most 10K runners run a really good 5K. And just those other events have now become more important than you realize, because people are able to kind of develop their strengths from those other events and then really combine those ingredients into that one race that they're specializing in, which is, for me, the 1500. So yeah, I think this year you're going to see a lot of 330s from a lot of people. I think I wouldn't be surprised seeing Hocker, Kerr, all those guys going into those races and running sub 330s, but being much more of a tactical race. Eugene's a fast track. The hype in Eugene is going to be fantastic. And I think going to that 1500, you've got a crazy depth of runners who can run low 330s. So I think they're just going to be 330 races, and it's going to be who can last, who can keep doing that, who can keep running 330 races and be competitive. And I think that's it's going to be what it takes to win or medal at those championship races.
Yeah, because it was after the Olympic final, Nick Willis called it like the greatest 1500-meter race that has ever been run. Now, you had the luxury of being in the race, so I'm curious as to like your vantage point. Like, one, do you agree with kind of like his assessment there? And then two, I guess, like what made it so special? And I guess this was, I guess, your first major global championship on the
Yeah.
senior level. What stood out to you, I guess, about the way before this is like NCAAs?
Yeah.
It's
That's probably my
totally
biggest.
different ballgame.
Yeah.
Exactly. So,
uh,
what stood out to you about the racing and the tactics there?
yeah, I agree with Nick's. I think as well, it was probably the hardest 1500-meter final to make because the first round, I looked at my heat and went, "Are you got to be fucking joking?" Like, I think Kerr finished 6th or 7th in that race, and he came up to me and he was like, "I just fucked that up," but he got through. Like the races were insane. I think I ran 3:34 average for every race, and it's just I think it was just so competitive with so many guys being able to run like that. It mentally drained me, and I think the amount of effort and energy I put into making the team um, was catching up to me. The toll was getting to that point. I think with the Olympics as well. Obviously, COVID I think had a factor too, is you couldn't leave the environment. I couldn't switch my brain off, and I spoke to Nick about it. He gave me some great advice about get obsessed with something other than running, reading, anything, video games. Just do something else. You need to be able to take your mind away from it. But I really couldn't do that. And every round I went through, I started to deteriorate a little bit more. And then when I got to the final, I think for me, mentally and physically, I was just at that toll of 1500-meter running. And I thought I didn't have the race I wanted to run, but I wasn't disappointed in my run. I ran 3:35, and I was 11th. So really for me, I think it was just a great learning experience of being able to, okay, this is my first major world championships, Olympic Games. What do I take away from this and improve on moving forward? And I think that's the one thing that Nick gave me great advice on, is that you learn how you are receptive to each round and how you deal with that kind of stress, whether it's intrinsic or extrinsic. And you got to find your way. You got to find your way to deal with it. And Mel Ahmed also gave me great advice too, because he's been able to kind of go through those races and be able to deal with it in a different way too. So I think for me, watching it from an outside lens, it was probably one of the greatest races. And the thing that broke my heart when I finished was there was no one around to see it live. Like, obviously you had the journalists and the people there that really appreciate the sport and love it, and the volunteers that work so hard to set that up regardless of the odds they were facing. But you don't have the young fans sitting there watching something unfold like that, because I feel like it's some of those events and some of those things like Castle Moorhome, like people will think, oh, I was there, I saw that, like I felt the energy there, but no one was there and they couldn't enjoy that. So hopefully in Paris, people are able to experience that, and those races will constantly develop and become better and greater. But I definitely agree with Nick's comment. I think it was something that was a privilege to be a part of, and a great learning experience. But even to make that final, like there's a lot of guys that didn't make it that was potentially could be in the top 6. So to have that competitiveness in the sport should be a really exciting factor, because hopefully it mixes it up. It makes things more exciting. You can root for more people to kind of be upsets, win medals, and be more competitive.
I'll tell you, you had the people who took you at plus 10,000 to 1 odds excited to even just see you in the final. I think that's what the Oregon, I guess, like betting line came out at the first time it was out, and I was like, it's too silly for no one to just not throw any amount of money on this.
My brother and his mates, like there was a gambling thing in Australia, like betting on it. And the funny thing about that was, because I don't think they fully understood the sport, because I think they had like there was like people that were definitely way better than other people with lesser odds, but it might have been related to like social media following or like presence in the media. And the funniest thing about that for me was, I think my brother and all his mates were starting to bet on it on me, and my odds dropped significantly down before even the event started. So like they were obviously not sure of like how the betting goes, but I think it's a really good thing for the sport, because it gets people excited about it, and gets people more invested in maybe personalized stories and how people got there, because I think the Olympics has so many unhidden stories and unhidden messages that people just miss, and I think they're great to be able to open that lens for people to kind of dive in by putting $1 on someone that you didn't realize, had to fight a lot of their, they had to fight injury or had to fight a lot of adversity to get where they are. So, yeah, I thought that was pretty hilarious, the way the betting thing was structured. But yeah, I mean, I would have made people a lot of money, but unfortunately I couldn't pull it off. So hopefully next time.
Yeah, I was messaging back with Sean Whip quite a bit about
Yeah.
just the odds that we were seeing in the U.S. and then the odds we were seeing down in Australia, and like just the differences of what you could find to do. Hopefully, it's all going to be a little bit more available to do in the U.S. Obviously, as an athlete, you
Yeah.
can't really
No.
you can't be
That's the
doing
worry, I can't
anything.
do
But
that.
as a
No.
fan now, it's extremely fun. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Chris.
Yeah, I was gonna ask sort of like the actual like Olympic experience outside of competition. Was it different? Because I know Dathan was probably registered as Joe's coach with Team USA, and so he was able to go see him at the practice track. Like, was that something that you were just like restricted to FaceTime? And I mean, it was good enough you got to see Joe in the village, but
Yeah.
to I guess lose Dathan and that I guess that pump up speech that he provides beforehand, like, must have been different.
Yeah, I was very fortunate for the AOC because they did give him passes for my event. Um, I think they weren't like because I don't really have a big. It's obviously developing now, but my name wasn't very big in Australia. Like Stewie was the big name, and rightfully so. What he had done and achieved for the past few years has been phenomenal for our sport. But he was kind of the big name because he was from home and he had much more of that media presence, which was fantastic for our sport. But the Australian community didn't really know me. This is my first Olympics. I kind of broke out. But once they started making it through the rounds, they started be going, okay, yeah, we'll give Dathan a pass and make sure he's there. Luckily for me, I think my final was Alicia's 10K. So Dathan was always going to be at the track, which was really nice. And I was very lucky with that. But he was able to see myself and Morgan, Alicia as well from Poland, as much as he possibly could. But he didn't have like the luxury of what those Bauman coaches have with those really 24-hour passes going wherever they want kind of thing. I think obviously that's a Nike thing because they had like 5 passes, like had 5 coaches there from Bauman. Whereas like, a coach that has 5 Olympians couldn't see his athletes. I don't think he even got to see Alicia much at all before her race. But he made it work. I mean, Dathan tells me stories about being stuck in his hotel room and then traveling with the coaches and going to 7-Eleven every night and picking up his meal, going back into the hotel room and staying there. So it was a very restricted process, but he loved it. And he definitely, put in his passion when he could. But I was very lucky that like some things aligned and I was able to kind of see him. And I think the one thing about having him there as well, which we were very fortunate, particularly as first-time Olympians for all of us, is the way he described events that what kind of went through, mistakes he made going to the Olympics. And obviously it was a very different one because of the restrictions and kind of being forced, into kind of the environment that you were pushed in. I mean, delegations had different protocols with COVID, and Australia was very, very strict. But the way he kind of talked about being able to like get yourself ready for the time management, I think was important. The buses, the getting to the track, getting ready, the warm up, the warm down, all those kind of things. It was reassuring to have someone there that knew how the process would work, particularly for all of us who haven't been there before. So having him there was a great presence. And I mean, a lot of athletes don't get that privilege, but we were very lucky and were able to get in there.
Awesome. All right, we're gonna go to some Instagram questions that we have from listeners, and we'll start with Keith. Well,
I was confused by this at first too, because like I was like, oh, why is everyone calling him Keith in the mentions? And of course, if you listen to your guys' podcast, I guess you said that on the Commonwealth, for the Commonwealth Games, you were registered as Keith once, right? Is that correct?
Yeah. So what happened was, I got like they have like a portal login, and obviously with COVID protocols and like medical data, they're trying to set up like an application where you send in all your information, and they put me down as Keith Hoare. I don't know where that came from, but my username is still Keith Hoare because they can't change it. They just rechanged the email and put it back to Oliver. So we joked about that in the pod, and then it kind of became a running in joke. Like people will call me Keith at the track. There's already an Instagram account called Keith Hoare 1309 who has almost like 150 followers. But there's a kind of a joke that's going on now that I'm not Oliver. I'm not like the guy doing it. I'm actually the imposter, and Keith is the guy that's coming in. So it's like an alter ego kind of thing going on at the moment. which is pretty funny. Athletics Australia unfortunately made a mistake, and now they have to deal with people calling me Keith Hoare. But that's a great to get to the question. The boys call me Keith here, so I haven't really been enjoying it, but it's been pretty funny. Keith, consider 5K at Worlds and Commonwealth. I had this conversation with George actually, because Geordie's thinking of doing the 15 and potentially maybe another event in the future. But it'd be interesting to see how I might hopefully run another 5K in the future, because running it like that's one thing. Running it against the best in the world in a competitive way where they can just drop a K like it's nothing is another thing. I think it'd be interesting to maybe potentially do like a 1500 at Worlds, maybe a 5K at Commonwealth Games, maybe mix it up and match, and see what we could do. There are talks from people saying, you could potentially double at the World Champs for the 1500 and 5K if I am lucky enough to get selected for it. But it'd be an interesting experience. This is my third ever 5K in my history of running, my second as a pro. So I think for me, I just need to unfortunately run more 5Ks, which doesn't sound great to me because I love the 1500. But it is something that I'm considering now, because I think after being able to run like that and being comfortable, and obviously so early in the season, I think it could be an event for me that I could potentially do well at. So definitely considering it.
Awesome. All right, our next one. Mustache care routine, need to ask everyone.
Yeah, you definitely do. Well, the great thing about it is the three boys in the pod can grow pretty good mustaches. And they're different type of mustaches. Like Geordie's isn't as thick, but it kind of is it's a lot more like of a Zorro mustache. And he kind of has the hair where it grows here and then it just doesn't, he shaves it, then it grows back very quickly, like my face. Whereas with Morgan's mustache, he can kind of turn into different shapes and sizes. Like Morgan's mustache can have a mind of its own. And my mustache is just pretty thick and red, unfortunately. But our mushroom care and routine's the same. We have a little wax that we put on it, make it look nice. But we also try and shave it up and do the twisty thing. I know Drew Hunter's got a fantastic mustache. But we were kind of growing them because we thought we looked like 80s porn stars. Thought it was pretty funny. And then obviously we thought, why not start a member and raise some money for men's mental health and men's health and kind of have fun with it. So we did that, and we were very lucky to get a great reception for that. We raised a bit of money, more than we expected, and that was awesome. And then my dad started growing mustaches. All our mates started growing mustaches, so we're kind of starting that trend of looking like 80s porn stars. So that was fun. But yeah, that mustache routine, you keep it clipped, trim down the rest of your face, and use a bit of that balm, bit of wax, because it makes it smell good. Because I noticed for me, particularly, when I drink coffee or eat stuff, you get a little bit of a after smell in that area. So putting the balm there really, really hinders that. So if that's a must.
You've got to make some sort of bet with Dathan to force him to grow out his. I don't know.
We've tried.
I know. That's why I'm saying you gotta have some sort of bet with him to force him to do it, because that guy
sub 350 at Milrose and he'll
sub
do
350 at Milrose.
I'm gonna do something. We're gonna collaborate that as well and try and push him to grow out a mustache or goatee. I'd love to see him with a goatee, because I think he's got the gray kind of freckle, the freckly kind of colored bits and pieces of hair that are coming out there now, and he grows out a bit, then he shaves it down, it's all clean shaven. But we're going to try and stop that and make him grow out a goatee, because I think it'd be hilarious.
Yeah.
So look out for that.
I think one of the years he was running professionally, I think he may have rocked the goatee. I might have to go back and look.
I'm gonna have to find that photo
with those old 2002 sunglasses that are kind of rounded.
I gotta find that photo.
I have got this photo in my head that I think might be him. All right, on to our next one. Australia versus UK versus USA versus World 4 by mile. Who wins? Who's on your team? How to improve your sport is too big of a question. We'll stick with the relay.
Yeah. I think the first thing is, you guys probably already mentioned it, but that mixed relay that they had at the Olympic Games? I would prefer to scrap that and turn it into a DMR.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I think you guys have mentioned. I just think that it's such a missed opportunity because the DMR is such an exciting sport in NCAA, And if you look at the countries that could be in it, there's a lot of countries there that could be competitive, because not every country has a good 400-meter runner, not every country has a good 800 runner, but they have great overall runners that they could do. On the Australian team, obviously Stewie, myself. I think, honestly, Matt Ramsden, I think, would be very good at that event. I think if he stays healthy and can get through that, he can probably run. I mean, he's run a 3:51, 3:34, 1500 to mile. And then I think Morgan would be a very, very dangerous 4x mile. The UK has a ridiculous amount of depth there. I mean, you got Whiteman, you got Hayward, you got Grice,
Kerr.
you got Kerr. Yeah, I mentioned Kerr last. But yeah, the depth there is unbelievable, and they're not the only ones. I'm sure missing like Gourley and other guys that have run, low 330s to 350 miles. I think the UK would be probably the favorite and the hardest one to beat. The US though, would be interesting, because you have Hocker, you have Centro, you have Nagoose, and Tia. I mean, Tia's run 350. He's the collegiate record holder in the mile, which I keep forgetting because of how crazy that year was for both those boys. But I think it would be a great race and a great mix up, because even like I don't even think Kenya would have a great team, but I don't think they would have the depth, particularly just the duration, like just the way that race would go. I think UK, US, and Australia would be very, very dominant in that event. So that would be very exciting to watch. I think who would win? I'm going to say Australia, because obviously. But I think if you put it down to it, it's going to go into the last 400. And it's going to be between the three, and they're all going to be there. So it depends on who's going to be able to pop it off and finish it off well. So I'm going to call Australia, because obviously I'm biased, but that would be an amazing race. And I think that would really hype up people in the sport, and also much more of the team-based thing. It's just exciting. Like if you ever watch the relays, and I mean, obviously the relays in the Olympic Games for track is phenomenal, but the longer relays in swimming are amazing to watch, because it just changes all the time. And I think that would happen a lot.
Yeah, well, even like we're all distance people here. Like there's it goes to like 6 to 8 deep for the 100. Like who gets to travel because of the relay pool and substitutions and stuff like that. And then in all the distance events, top 3, and that's it. So a DMR 4x mile at champs and stuff, I think would be phenomenal. Also, it allows that 4th place person to probably go in the 8 or in the 15. 400 runners, they have that whole relay pool. All the sprinters have that relay pool.
It's a big relay pool too. It's massive. In the US, I think they took 10 people.
Yes, it's
huge. There's so much depth there. If you can show it off.
Next one, biggest culture shock when you moved to the US.
Oof. Definitely, I think for me it was the coffee culture. That kind of breakfast brunch culture was a bit of a shock. Also sport, I think, which is an interesting thing, because we're very sporty in Australia, but collegiately wise, the way people just wear their college with so much pride. In Australia, that's just not the case, because we don't have college teams competing like that as much, or as in a larger scale like that. So that was a massive shock. I remember going to a football game and getting absolutely cursed out, to the point where a guy wanted to fight me because I wasn't wearing any Wisconsin gear. I was just wearing I think I was wearing some just casual gear. I was getting ridiculed because I was in a really nice seat. I was watching the football and I was just getting completely destroyed. And I didn't get it. I was I'm here supporting. I don't know what you want from me. But then I look around and everyone's in red or white, So that was a big culture shock for me. And also the coffee, because I just could not understand how people can drink that drip drop coffee. It's just disgusting. I don't it's unusual to not see in Australia 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. cafes being opened and people going in for their coffee in the morning. And that's a big culture shock for me, because I remember when I first moved to the US, nothing was open until probably 7, 8 o'clock, and people were making drip coffee and pouring it in, and I just couldn't drink that crap. So that was a bit of a shock for me, and I really enjoyed when I got my nice espresso machine and being able to control that culture shock and be able to bring a bit of home back.
I took a recruiting trip to Wisconsin. Obviously my senior year, and the jump around as a
Oh
recruit
yeah.
was absolutely wild. And then we went to a hockey game against what's Wisconsin's biggest hockey rival?
I would
Minnesota.
say it's Minnesota or Boston
I
College,
think it was
yeah, because
Minnesota.
they're very
It
good,
was
all
it
three of
was
them.
wild. Like that recruiting trip was absolutely wild, and I absolutely loved my weekend there. That was cool. It was yeah, I it was phenomenal.
Very
The
passionate. They're
sporting
very
events were so
passionate.
fun. Um,
That's awesome.
yeah, was close. There was a shot I was gonna go there. All right, here's your next one. Oh, do I have it? Yeah, I got it. Favorite non-running related memory at Wisconsin.
Oh, it has to be. Honestly, it's just I guess it's non-running related. It's hard because everything kind of related to running. Um, I loved. Um, I don't know. I guess it's running related, so I can't say that one. I loved how I love like the scene, like the college life. I think in Wisconsin, in Madison. Madison's a very unique place. I mean, I traveled around a lot and seeing other colleges having a similar vibe, but the city is literally built into the college. I feel like the city's not itself. Like Madison isn't a city more or less than Madison is a college town. And I loved the atmosphere, game day, the atmosphere, like the people around there, like the bars, the food life. It was actually such a shock for me because I didn't know much about Madison moving from Sydney. I was getting much more of a vibe of like a small town, not having that much of a culture shock in the sense of like a city life, but they just had such a way of making you feel like you're part of a community that's still like very much college based. Everyone was on the same kind of team. When you saw foreigners coming in wearing Minnesota or Michigan, um, clothing or apparel, people would just belittle them in a good way. Obviously, they weren't super mean, but they'd stir them up and give them a bit of shit. And that was what I loved about it was that like it was their town, and I really enjoyed that because it made me feel like obviously coming from such a far away from home, it made me feel like I had a second home, like I was creating another home here in the US, and I really loved that, and I still do miss it a lot. So. Um, that's probably one of the biggest favorite memories I have is just being a part of that town in Madison.
Chris, have you ever been there?
Madison, I took a couple trips up for the cross country meet. I didn't spend too much time in the city. I think I was just kind of in and out because I went to Marquette down in Milwaukee, so I just like took the bus up. But all I remember, my favorite thing was the cheese curds up there were
Oh,
better than in Milwaukee. It was at the old fashioned, I think is what it was called. That place
yeah,
like was
yeah.
really good.
That place is like legit. That place and
Yeah.
Dottie's Dumplings are like the two big places to get like the best cheese curds they reckon in the world.
I absolutely loved and was totally shocked by like when class got out, and then all of a sudden
Oh
there's
yeah,
40,000 motorbikes or scooters just ripping around. Like everybody owned like a little moped or whatever, and
yeah.
it was just like
It was
instead of
enough.
like Eugene, it was bikes because the campus was way smaller, but like just because the campus is in the city, everyone just it was crazy. Class got out and there was just thousands of them everywhere.
I've heard that's changed a little bit now. People have like electric scooters. Like they've
Oh
bought like a
wow.
lot of the football team have electric scooters now and they ride them around. And I was
Makes
like, wow,
sense.
what a change.
All right, here's the next one. How much Mountain Dew do you drink in the off season? What is your favorite Mountain Dew flavor? I didn't know you were a Mountain Dew person.
Yeah, no, it's an non-running joke. I am a Mountain Dew person. How much do I drink off season? I remember coming back from New York and just having a 2 liter bottle. I don't know what that is in ounces, but I had that and I drank that in the entire day and I was sick. Um,
Oh
because
wow.
I was just like so excited to be able to like drink a lot of it. It's just disgusting. I don't endorse any drinking soda. Do not do it. You'll be a better person than me. But it's just something that it's a little, a little treat that I have for myself when I drink that. Um, but my favorite flavor, honestly, just the original one. There's like this old school one I could get at Wisconsin that was like the original one, like with a different label. That was my favorite. Um, but yeah, I don't really mess with the other flavors. I just get the original one. If I'm gonna get a soda, it's usually that one. But I'm trying to substitute that with sparkling water. So I'm trying to drink a lot of sparkling water because I think it's just the bubbles that I'm addicted to. But yeah.
I don't think the question made the cut of like the ones that I screenshot from Instagram, but there was someone who did ask if you had to give up, it was either beer, which I would guess I would throw NA beer, I guess, that you guys always shout out on your podcast, or Mountain
Yeah.
Dew. But I'll throw in coffee. Which of the three would you give up?
I would give up Mountain Dew because I can't, like, I love my coffee. I love like the process of making coffee too. I find it very meditative. And I think as well, like, definitely, yeah, I love beer. I really love beer. And I think that's the one thing I've loved it being in Colorado is the beer here is fantastic. The NA beers we've been trying out in the pod have been lovely. And I've really enjoyed being able to try different types of beer, hazy IPAs. Like we've got a really good brewery down from where we live. And I think we definitely have that. I mean, Geordie has this kind of saying, a hazy a day keeps the doctor away. So we kind of enjoy, like, I think it's also that process of like recovery mentally, being able to sit down with your mates, have a beer, just one beer, have a chat, and then get back to work. Like we just really enjoy that kind of aspect to it. So yeah, I'd definitely get rid of Mountain Dew. It pains me to say that because I have an addiction. There's a problem with me with that, but we'll try and get through it.
We've got just two more of these. So here you go. What's it going to take to beat Jakob at the World Champs?
It's a great question. I think it's interesting because his dad did mention that his threshold is pretty much perfect. Like he can't get much better in that threshold sense. It's his speed though that he can get a lot better in, which is terrifying because if you look at the way he races, he's able to kind of finish off that race as best as possible. And he looks like he can run a very, very fast pace, but very relaxed at the end. Like the way he's able to finish races is very impressive. He's always been able to kind of push it through and stay relaxed. And relaxed fast is a hard thing to learn. Like I feel like when you run fast, like I'm sorry to use him as an example, and no offense to him, but Cole Hocker, the way he runs that last 100 meters is hard to watch as a runner because he's just throwing everything at it. His legs are going everywhere, but he's getting the result. He's getting the win. He's getting through it. But if you watch Jakob finish a race, he doesn't lose that energy. It's still getting pushed out, and he's very much getting control of what he's doing. He's relaxed and he's fast. And I think the way to beat Jakob in a race like that is to be able to kind of not let him go and retaliate when you know. Because I think with him, he was very tired at the end of the season. He mentioned that he just wanted to have a break when I got to Zurich, and Chariot was able to get him for that Diamond League final. But I think for him, like it's all about being able to be there and be receptive to him, to be able to finish him off. Because really, I mean, yeah, his threshold is on point, but if his speed's not on point, then people are going to be able to develop that. And people like Cole, for example, if he's able to kind of be able to stay relaxed and run fast like that and keep all that energy and push it into a way in which he can kind of be much more, what's the word?
Just like efficient.
Much more efficient, that's the word. If he can be much more efficient in that energy output, he could fly past Jakob in that last 100 if he's there and he's capable of it. And that's probably what I would want to do, and that's what Kerr would want to do, and pretty much everybody else in the world who wants to be, a world champion. So for Jakob, yeah, you really want to be able to, obviously the strength's important, the threshold's important, people know that. But obviously now there's an aspect of being relaxed and fast that you need to be able to kind of perfect. And that's going to be what it takes to win a world championship in the 1500.
All right, here's our last RG question. Between you and Jordy, will there be a friendly rivalry for Oceania records?
Of Oceania. Oh, me and George have always had an interesting relationship with. The first time. When George won in the indoor mile, I remember thinking like this guy's going to be annoying. He's going to be annoying for me because he's going to be living rent free in my head, and he has been for a while. And I've really enjoyed kind of being able to live with him and being on a team with him now, because I can give him a bit of shit too, because I think now I can kind of even the score out because he lives in my head, but I can like annoy him. I think, yeah, right now, me, Geordie and Morgan could easily when Morgan gets, up to where he wants to be able to perform and race. Easily, these three guys could be interchanging between Oceania records. I think we all want to knock Nick Willis off the record books, just because I think for him, it'd be funny to see his reaction to that. But yeah, I think we definitely have that rivalry and that excitement about it. I mean, I didn't even know that we broke the Oceania record. I guess it makes sense because New Zealand and Australia are probably the two dominant countries in Oceania, to have a record like that. So when I broke it and I made sure I beat Geordie, that was an exciting moment because I kind of had PTSD of him coming back and passing me in the last 200. But he did close in at 26. He just wasn't up behind me, thank God. Yeah, that rivalry will continue, and it will continue with Morgan too. And hopefully, you guys can see that and can see that little bit of resentment or a little bit of arrogance on the pod when it eventually happens. When maybe Geordie beats the Oceania record, or Morgan or myself, we can kind of keep people up to date with that.
Awesome.
All right, the final questions I ask every guest. First one is, what's the meanest thing you've read about yourself on Let'sRun.com?
Oh, I did get something mean. Somebody mentioned that I was overweight, like I was fat, I was like skinny fat, and I felt hurt by that because I thought I worked really hard to like do my physique. But I remember when I read that comment because I was a sophomore and I got to the track and Mick doesn't hold anything back, and he said, "Have you had a couple of muffins, darling?" Because I had my shirt off and I was running and I had these love handles just flapping in the back. I had some I don't know what, like some fat. It was Mountain Dew reserves near my back. So that was pretty hurtful. But I mean, I think for me, it was just funny because I read hurtful things about like my performances or my racing. Yeah. Or I don't know, stuff like that. But I didn't really find that hurtful. It was of the objective thing, which was, I was very disappointed in myself because I thought I could be better than that, but I wasn't. I was very insecure. So I did a lot of sit-ups to try and get rid of it. Still there, but luckily I can wear the speed suit and it sucks it all in. So,
next one up was, I haven't done these in a while. It's funniest drug testing story you've got.
Oh, well, I guess the funniest one for me was definitely in New York. I had this old guy who had to like follow me around, and I was kind of cooling down because I couldn't pee yet, but he was kind of trying to like run with me, and I was scared this guy was gonna have a heart attack because he was like 80 years old, and I think it was his like first time. He was very serious about it, and that's the one thing you can get. You can get ones that are very, very serious about it and will not, like, you can't even like go past the corner without them being there, or you get ones that like don't even say anything to you and you could all of a sudden run off and they're like, oh, he's gone, I guess I'll report that to the thing. So like he was one of those guys that was just on you like shit on Velcro. He just wouldn't leave, and yeah, he was just running around, and then all of a sudden he had to take a break, so they actually swapped guys, and I got another guy who actually had to follow me around as well. So that was kind of funny because it was indoor track. It was at the Ocean Breeze, so I was running up and down this like little section of the hallway, and he was following me up and down, up and down. I was like, God, mate, you could stand at one side. I'm coming back. I thought that was pretty funny.
That's pretty good. If you could go on a run anywhere in the world with anyone from history, assuming they could hold a nice conversational pace with you, they don't have to be a runner, they don't have to be a real person, where would the run take place and who would it be with?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, I'd love to run. I haven't actually done it, and it's something that I've had to do because I know, obviously, Nike aside, but that track with the trees in it. What's that track called? Yeah, I'd love
The
to
Michael
run
Johnson
there.
track on the campus, yeah.
I'd love to run there because I think I remember growing up seeing that thing and I thought that was the coolest thing I've ever seen. I'd love to run there, and I'd love to run with, I think, Seb Coe, because particularly, obviously, I'd love to run with Steve Ovett too. Those two are my favorite because of their rivalries, and I'd love to see their like outlook on the sport, like what they did and the way they kind of portrayed the way they were running. Like I had so many questions for them as athletes, but also as like their lifestyle, because I think they were in a different era, but they were just unbelievably good, and from the same country. And that to me would be very interesting to see how like their outlook on the sport would have been. So that would definitely be for me. Love to do that. Seb's still
Final
around,
question.
so I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
if he
You
wants
just
to
got to
come for a
catch him
run,
at
we'll be.
Worlds, probably. He'll definitely be at
Well,
Worlds. He's
I ran into him at Zurich, and he knew who Dathan and I were, which was like huge for me. But I mean, he's the big president, so probably won't see him much around commoners like me. But I'd love to pick his brain because I feel like him and like Johnny Walker and um, there's a lot of athletes, a lot of mid-distance athletes in particular. I'd love to sit down and have a chat with because I think everyone's perspective is so different going into that event. And that event for me is just 1500 in particular is just like it's an interesting event. So yeah.
Last one has nothing to do with running. It's you get 25 shots from half court on a full-size basketball court. If you make one, you win $25 million. If you don't make any, you go to jail for 25 years. Would you attempt the shots?
Yeah,
Really?
I would. The issue is because I risk. I always risk stuff, and that's like a bad trait. I mean, have you ever played Farkle?
No.
Like, there's like Farkle, like dice, or like when you gamble on something, I always take it. I always go for the gamble, and it's really bad because I always lose. But when I win, I think like, oh yes, this is beautiful. I'm gonna win again. So that's why I don't go to casinos. But yeah, like, I risk it. I definitely risk it. I mean, I'm pretty bad at basketball. I never played it growing up, so but I could, Carlos could teach me a few things. Justin Knight could teach me a few things. So hopefully, those boys can like train me before that for like 10 minutes, and then hopefully I don't go to jail.
Yeah. We need a coffee club video of you guys attempting the challenge or something like that, and put money down.
I'll mention it. I'll mention it to the boys. Yeah, I mean we've got some ideas coming out, so that'll be a fun one. We can put into the pot.
You could put someone into workout jail.
Yeah.
Make them lead.
Yeah.
All right,
That's actually a
so
really good idea.
people can catch you on the Coffee Club podcast, and then I guess next up, racing-wise, you got Milrose Games sub 350 going for the win this time around, right? That sounds about right.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I mean, like the field's going to probably be ridiculous, but I'd love to. I mean, Milrose is a fantastic event, so it'd be awesome to come away for a win like that. But I think for me, yeah, it's going to races and trying to win races is definitely the name of the game these days. So that's the plan.
And then breaking Mottram's 12:55 record outdoors for 5K.
Oof, that might be tough. I mean, I got a message from him after the race, and he said great job, and looking forward to seeing how you go for this year. And breaking his record would be pretty interesting. It'd be pretty hard to do too. So I mean, Stewie hasn't done it yet either. So that's a task. I think for us is to hopefully get under 13 minutes, hopefully get under 3:30 for the 15, and then we can put our stuff up there with a very, very good company. And that would be a very, very lovely way to aim for this season.
Awesome. Well, Ollie, appreciate you taking the time to do this. This is a blast, and looking forward to listening to more on the Coffee Club podcast.
I was
Thank you for having me.
I was looking for my Mottram poster, which I have from Reebok.
Oh, do you have one?
Forever ago. It's somewhere in that closet, and damn, I should have brought it out. Yeah, but it's from
Big Buster.
Yeah, it's from my junior year of high school, I think, when it was the Reebok Indoor Games. Kyle Merber, I think, just posted the same photo of it. Like he had it too. Signed, good luck.
That's sick.
We had this, and this is like right when the whole like the big Mizungo, like him falling. There's like that little running documentary that kind of came out about him. So like at the time he was like the guy. It was some of like the best content that was coming out of running at the time.
Yeah.
But he was like kind of all of our heroes. And then we went to Reebok Indoor, and we went to the hotel they were staying at, and we called up to his room. It was me, Kyle, Chris Derrick, and a couple others. And we called up to his room, and he was like taking a nap or something like that. Like we woke him up like the day of the race or something like that. And then I think his agent was also in the lobby, and she calls us over, and we think that we're in trouble. We're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, that was like really cool. Whatever. Like, what are your guys' names? And we're like, oh shit, like we're in trouble. She ends up getting us a bunch of signed shit from him. And it was like, all right, like after your guys' race, just hang around. I'll get him to like come talk to you guys. And we had some sort of bet that if Chris Derrick broke 416 or something, he had to ask Mottram how big his balls were, because he had that famous quote.
Yeah,
It was
that
like,
famous
why?
quote.
Yeah. And it's just like, oh, it's about the size of my balls. Like that's why
Yeah.
I'm running 13 minutes, or breaking 13. And we're all in high school, so, and it's Craig Mottram, so we're all getting nervous, and he ends up running, winning the 2 mile, and all of us are standing right off the track, and Chris Derrick has to ask him, hey Craig, I have one question for you. And he's coming straight off the track from winning. He's like, I gotta ask you, how big are your balls? And he like doesn't pull his nuts out, but like moves kind of his shorts, and he goes, hey, big enough, mate, and just like sort of walks off. It was awesome. We got all this cool stuff. He talked to us for a long
awesome.
time. He was awesome. It was so cool.
That's sick.
Yeah.
Awesome, Ollie. Well, I appreciate you taking the time for this. This was great. And best of luck training for the rest of the indoor season and then outdoors.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ollie.
Sweet.